Let's focus on the last day, day 3. According to the data that will appear for you, we have the top speed on this third day, with Albon being the fastest at 318, and you have the slowest at 305. Most likely, McLaren was running at a much lower engine pace. This had already been speculated yesterday, as we brought to you, and you see that the rest are very close, with everyone running in similar configurations, sometimes in terms of aerodynamic load, sometimes engine settings. It's interesting to note that, for example, Alfa Romeo was very fast on the straight every day, always among the best, which could indicate a car with low downforce that will perform better on high-speed tracks like Monza, where less downforce is required for higher top speeds. Ferrari was in the middle ground, so we'll have to wait and see what the team's true configurations are. Another interesting piece of information from day 3 is the sectors. Williams was the fastest in the first sector, Mercedes in the second and third, and Red Bull had the best overall lap. Red Bull maintained a top 3 position in all sectors. This is, of course, considering both drivers from the teams that had 2 drivers on this third day. You'll notice that Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo, and Red Bull are teams that consistently appear among the last when it comes to performance across these 3 days. So don't be surprised if these teams end up near the bottom when they hit the track. But still, we'll wait and see. There's another detail we need to discuss in the next video to understand what these preseason data really mean in practice. The last data I want to share with you from day 3 is the fastest times. You see that George Russell was the fastest, closely followed by Max Verstappen. Then, Albon putting Williams in the top 3. Williams had a noteworthy preseason in terms of time, but it's very unlikely they will be in the top 3 during the season. So, Williams is probably running with a lower fuel load than everyone else, setting faster times. You can also see Berman at the back, which has been typical of Haas, as they usually test with lower pace. Bortoleto is also back there, and Seeberg has been a constant throughout preseason. As I mentioned, Aston Martin and Racing Bulls are also appearing at the back. So, on this third day, things didn't deviate much from the previous days. We'll need to wait for long-run data to understand if anything has changed from yesterday to today, and to identify who's truly standing out heading into the season. Now let's move on to some important 2026 preseason news, starting with the 2026 preseason. That's right, since there will be new regulations, Formula One is looking to hold more than one preseason session, with the first in Barcelona at the end of January. So, by the end of January, we'd have cars on track with less time for the teams to develop their cars. After that, in February, we'd have another preseason in Bahrain, just like we're having now at the end of February. This would give teams extra days of testing, allowing them to better understand their cars under the new engine regulations, which are always very complex. The ideal is to have as many tests as possible, since during the season there are no more tests like there were in the early 2000s. Our first major accusation of the season is from Red Bull, who officially stated that some teams are already bypassing the regulations. What's happening is that Pierre, the new head of Red Bull's technical department, who's behind the whole concept now, is no longer dependent on Adrian, said in an interview that McLaren and Ferrari are still using the mini DRS system. So, Red Bull is hoping that by the time the Australian Grand Prix comes around in about 2 weeks, the FIA will be more vigilant with these rear wings. Remember, in preseason testing, you can use illegal parts on the car, just like in free practice on Friday. But when it comes to official sessions like qualifying in the race, you can't have illegal parts. For those who don't remember, the Mini DRS is a system McLaren developed where even with the wing closed, the pressure from the air causes it to open slightly, generating more straight-line speed even with the wing closed. This became controversial last year, and there was even a calculation that McLaren gained significant time during races because of it. Some people will certainly view Red Bull's accusation as just a claim of being behind, but we'll talk about that in the next video because, as it seems, Red Bull is indeed losing ground to its rivals. But the important thing here is that it's the first accusation, and obviously Red Bull is making this accusation in preseason to see if McLaren and Ferrari are indeed breaking the rules. If they aren't breaking the rules, Red Bull clearly noticed something different in their rear wings and will copy it. That's what protests are for, to gather information about what the opposition is doing. Once the protest is formally filed with the FIA, the team being protested must share the information with everyone, and Red Bull will likely formally request an investigation soon. For now, Red Bull is making this formal accusation through interviews so the world can keep an eye on McLaren and Ferrari's rear wings, as Pierre believes those two teams are using the system. We'll have to wait for Australia to confirm it. The cars should be updated by then. For example, Red Bull showed up today with an updated car, rather different from what they had on the previous 2 days. Verstappen even spun at one point, not sure if it was because he's getting used to the new car or if something else was wrong. On this third day, we also had some oddities, like a bus on track causing a red flag, and a piece of glass breaking and ending up on the track. But overall, we have a preseason where teams have been performing very well.